Hello, wizards, witches, and everyone in between. My name is Emma, and today I will be doing my October wrap-up. So I read 8 books in the month of October. Let's just jump right on in. So the first thing I read was Paper Girls Volume 5, and I gave this 4 stars. I read this, I think, on like October 1st, so I don't remember it that well. But I do remember I liked it better than Volume 4, and I just got Volume 6 from my library, so I'm very excited. I really love this graphic novel series. If you don't know Paper Girls, like, the first volume, it's gotten a lot more, like, of a complex plotline now that involves, like, time travel and all this kind of stuff, but Volume 1 is basically this group of girls who deliver newspapers, and they run into some sci-fi time traveling things. So it's very like Stranger Things, E.T., those kind of vibes, but with like an all-girl group, which is awesome. Next, I read Dr. Sleep by Stephen King, and I gave this 4 stars. I talked about this more in depth in my Stephen King video that I did recently. I will link it. There's a lot of people who don't like this, or who definitely like it less than The Shining. And I do agree, I don't think it needed to be written, but it is, and I read it, and I actually liked it better than The Shining, I think, just in terms of like the pacing. The pacing was good in this. The Shining has very slow parts. It's still worth reading, but it can be very tedious and slow, and I did not find that with this. It could be that I listened to it on audiobook. I'm not sure. This follows Danny Torrance, the son from The Shining, and kind of looks into what he's doing after the events of The Shining. He's an adult in this, and he connects with some other people who also have a Shining ability, and they go and solve this big conflict that I don't want to spoil for you. But I read this when it first came out, and I couldn't remember anything about it. That's true for 2 books in this wrap-up. I have a terrible memory, but so I wanted to reread it before the movie comes out because I'm very excited for that. I love Ewan McGregor. I love Stephen King. I really enjoyed it. I'm very excited for the movie now. This book, I do think it was just a really good spooky read. And I don't think you necessarily have to read The Shining, actually, to read this, but it just, you know, I guess when he talks about his dad, it's like you get a little bit more context of like knowing what happened to his dad at the Overlook Hotel in The Shining, but it really doesn't tie into the Shining book all that much. So next I listened to Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel by A.W. Jontha, and I gave this 2 stars. So a lot of people I know thought that the Hocus Pocus part, the first half of the book, was better than the sequel part. But to me, I mean, okay, I gave it 2 stars. I was very harsh on it. However, it is just a fun Halloween-y read, and I listened to it very early in October, and, you know, I didn't expect much from it, so I wasn't really let down. I do think, like, if I was a lot younger, I probably would have been more into it, but the first half is literally the movie of Hocus Pocus just put into novel format. So it feels very unnecessary. The dialogue's the same, and it just, you know, draws out the events of the movie. So it makes everything longer. So the sequel, despite being a little bit fan-fiction-y and predictable as to the plot of it and everything, I enjoyed it just because I didn't, like, know all the words already and know scene by scene what's about to happen. So I enjoyed the sequel. Wouldn't really recommend this book, but if you want just like a light and fluffy, you know, Halloween time read, it was good for that. Next, I read Giant Days Volume 1 by John Allison, and this was a graphic novel series that I saw someone, I wish I could remember who, but someone had posted a picture of it on Instagram, and I love the artwork, and so I found it at my library, and it's about these 3 friends in college, and that kind of drew me in because a lot of the graphic novels that I gravitate towards, if they're not like fantasy based, it's usually with younger characters, and so I was excited to have characters like more my age, and it was okay. I thought I would like it a lot more than I did. I gave it 3 stars. Like, it was good, but I don't know, I just wasn't as excited. I got like the first 8 volumes from my library and I only read 1.5. But I think parts of it were just hard to follow along with. But I do think if you're interested in it, you should give it a chance. I think maybe I wasn't in the right mood for it or something. I don't know. I had a weird time with it, but I do think it is worth checking out, and I do think people need to be talking about it more because it's a really cool concept. Next, I listened to Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is the other book that I read a while ago and forgot everything about, and aside from like the very basic plot lines, because the movie with Winona Ryder was like my go-to movie when I was sick as a kid. Like I have vivid memories of like staying home from school and like eating soup at like 1 PM watching that version of Little Women. I don't know. I don't know why. But yeah, so I had like a basic idea, but the new movie's coming out. I'm so excited. There's so many actresses I love in that movie. And so I just kind of wanted to refresh, and I decided to listen to it this time. And I had the best time. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5. I would have given it a 5, but it was just very, like, it's a children's story. It's like, you know, back in the day, it was like a children's book. So it kind of preaches to you a little bit at times. It, like, you know, has Joe or Meg go off and make a mistake and they come back, and then their mom is like telling them about how, you know, well, this is why it went wrong and this is what you should do next time and this is what you can learn from this experience. And they're like, okay, Marmee, I'll promise to do that next time. So that got a little bit annoying, but the characters are just so good, and I definitely liked it more this time around than I did when I was younger, just because the characters, like, I'm older than them now, so I feel like I can relate to what they were going through. I really, really I think everyone loves Joe, but I also really like Meg, and just, I don't know, all the sisters were just so different, and that's something that I had forgotten about, was you only get so much of a sense of, like, their 4 personalities in a movie, and I kind of just remember, like, Amy was the young, annoying one, Joe was like the cool writing one, and then I literally couldn't remember Beth or Meg, like what set them apart, or like what ages they were, like who was oldest, and it was such a fun time. I really think this is a really good classic if you haven't read a lot of classics and want to get into this. The writing is not like what you would think it would be for like a classic older book. It's really easy to read, and I mean, I would recommend listening to it if you do like audiobooks. Christina Ricci narrated it, and she was really good. It's so cozy. It's such a cozy book, and just gives you all these like warm family vibes and kind of Christmassy vibes. So here's my bad attempt at explaining what this is about. So there are 4 sisters, Meg, Joe, Beth, and Amy, and their mom, and they are living in poverty. They're living in New England during the Civil War, and their dad is fighting in the Civil War, and so they have to deal with worrying about him, worrying about having enough money to put food on the table, and each sister in her own way, because they're all different ages, but they're trying to figure out who they are and what they want to do with their lives, and how to make money and still be happy, and how to be happy with the little that they have and not sit there wishing that they had more money. And it's just so good. So read it. Next, I read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and I gave it 2 stars. It was a struggle. I get the people who rate it maybe 4 stars, but I do not understand the people who rate it 5 stars. I have watched a lot of like reviews of it by people who absolutely love this book, and I do not see where they're coming from. Okay, so this book is about this circus. That's what you think it's about going in, is this circus that pops up without notice all over the place. And the circus is very aesthetic. It's black and white, and like the ground is black and white, like everything's just very magical. That was the saving grace for me in this book, was the flowery writing and the vibe of this, the atmosphere. It was very atmospheric, very magical and dark, and I really liked that. However, character and plot-wise is what dropped this down to 2 stars. I was so confused for most of this book. Like, even in the end, I feel like I didn't fully understand basic things to where how it ended wasn't as impactful for me. And just the way that it was structured with, it followed too many people's perspectives, and we didn't get any backstory really on any of them. Like the 2 main characters, by the end, I still felt like I knew them just on a surface level. And then it jumps back and forth in time, and it was a mess. Like, structurally, I found it to be a mess. Yeah, so it was a struggle to get through. It literally took me the entire month to read this. But, you know, I've read it now, and I do appreciate its atmosphere and its writing, but that's it. Next, I listened to Something in the Water by Catherine Steadman, and I gave this 4 stars. I talked about this in my recommendations video last week, so I don't want to ramble on for a very, very long time, but it is a thriller and is told from the perspective of this wife. And chapter 1 starts out with this wife digging a grave and telling us how hard it is to dig a grave and wondering how deep she has to make it. And she's worried about if the sun's gonna come up before she's dug it deep enough. And we learn in the first chapter that she's burying her husband. So flash back 3 months, and the rest of the book takes place like 3 months before that, and then it catches up to itself in the end. And 3 months before that, they are going on their honeymoon to Bora Bora. And everything's fine, they're in love, everything's great. So you really are wondering, like, what led this character to have such a big, you know, transition to burying her husband in the middle of the night to being in love with him, you know, 3 months ago. And so it was really, really well written. I loved it. So suspenseful. My heart was like pounding listening to some scenes where you're like, oh my god, this person has 10 seconds to do this. How are they gonna do it? The characters are really complex. They're not really, you know, they're morally gray, which I really like. And it was cool. The main character is a badass, and I highly recommend it. Alright, and then yesterday on Halloween, I read Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell. I was so excited that my hold on this at the library came through just in time for me to read this on Halloween. It was perfect. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was really cute. I went into it blind, so I don't really want to give anything away, and I feel like it's so easy to do that with like a really short graphic novel like this. But basically these 2 characters work at a pumpkin patch, and that's all you need to know. And working at a pumpkin patch was like my childhood dream. I wanted to work at a pumpkin patch and a Christmas tree farm. So it was really cool. I kind of got to live my childhood dream vicariously through this graphic novel, but I really liked it. I thought it was really cute, really festive. Alright, those are the books that I read in October. Hope you had a wonderful Halloween. In the comments, I would love to know if you are one of the people that get in the Christmas spirit in November or not. I am usually 100% Christmas in November, but this year I think I'm just enjoying fall too much to where, like, I'm not gonna bust out my Christmas decor right now, which is usually what I would be doing. But anyway, let me know. I find that really interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!